Trumpageddon, Episode 3. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Revelation 17:8. Making this the seventh severe earthquake along the San Andreas Fault this year alone, coupled with the resultant fires and delays of federal aid to the Blue State, have left many residents packing their bags and moving east. If only we had swept the forest, Sarah. We can't all be geniuses, John. Donald soiled his diaper in anger, trying to turn the television off in vain. He banged the remote on the table and threw it at the screen. He groused, "They always shit-talk me. I always start nice and polite, and then they shit-talk me. Those liars need to lose their jobs. The station needs to lose its license, Bill. Listen, they're talking about America very badly. These criminals need to face justice, Bill." And he added with a guttural yawp to the staff outside the dining room, "Wet wipes." "They'll be shut down tomorrow, Mr. President." Barr nodded and bowed and scraped his way backwards out the door, clutching his shriveled testicles and wondering if the job had been worth Trump's sadistic demands. Add another thing to the list that the orange golem could remember at any moment and require yet another pound of flesh. Trump may have owned him, but he had power over everyone else. That made it worth it. Right? Pain seared through his balls again. Right. Uvalde Elementary School, Uvalde, Texas. "All right, everyone out the window and hug the wall. If you see him, climb back in. If the cops get here, wait until they wave you over and then run to them. Go, go, stay sharp. William, you're in charge." These last few months, Gama had thrown himself into teaching, tutoring, and extracurricular programs like archery and gymnastics. On Wednesdays and Sundays, he led the youth group at his church. The kids had been left without an instructor after his wife Gemma was killed by a drunk driver. An illegal immigrant drunk driver. Police had recently informed him. Over and over and over it played in his mind that she simply never should have died. If that mongrel had never gotten in here, he could never have killed her. Gama thought about changing careers to join the Border Patrol. Donald Trump had recently doubled their pay to gain more personnel, and Greg Abbott had yet again slashed teacher pay. But his students, there was nothing more rewarding than those young faces eager to learn. These words, these books, kiddos, are the greatest miracle mankind has ever achieved. We first discovered this magic thousands of years ago. And it is magic. This thing that creates like God, such concepts as freedom, love, and kindness in our sacred documents handed down through history. The Constitution of the United States and all its amendments. The Bible, yes, the Quran and the Torah. Homer, Shakespeare, Dickens, Mark Twain, John Steinbeck, Ray Bradbury, Stephen King, and countless more. I know you don't know about them yet, but you will, and I want you to be excited to learn about them. These words make it possible for us to read the minds of great men long gone. This is a beautiful world with so many amazing works of art and nature that far outweighs the darkness in this world. You have an exciting journey ahead of you. His own words echoed like acid in his ears as Gama rushed down the hall to the sound of gunfire. But the irony was soon replaced with rage. Some copycat killer come to make a name for himself by massacring children, my children. Gama's heart faltered and he almost turned back, but he knew the odds against him unarmed. He sprinted harder. Gama burst into the gym and ravaged his equipment bin. He had no quiver. He would get one, maybe two shots at best. No time to think. He threw a handful of arrows down the back of his shirt, grabbed his compound bow, and ran toward the sound of gunfire. Exactly as years before, police stood outside, dumbfounded and frightened by the sound of their kryptonite, the AK-47. But this time, the assailant had gone from classroom to classroom doing the unthinkable. As Gama turned the corner back to his classroom, he saw a shattered door just rooms ahead of him and knew from the lessening gunfire that the killer was about to move on. He'd beaten the bastard back to his kids, thank God. But how many others had he massacred? Gama's face grew terrible in anger. He knocked an arrow while careening down the hall as he aimed for the man's head to come around the corner. But at that moment, police had arrived and some of the younger children outside the window started to run toward them. William screamed at them to wait for a signal. The noise caught the shooter's notice, just as he was about to leave the adjacent room. Gama entered to seeing the murderer mowing down his students from the window and shot an arrow through the back of his neck. The monster fell and choked and was dead before Gama remembered to lower his bow. For hours, police and reporters swarmed the school. William was in shock and he just kept repeating, "I told him not to go yet. He said I was in charge." Gama just hugged him and didn't let go until his parents came and took him home. He gave what seemed like 1,000 interviews but didn't remember a word. He went home and begged God to take him and let him join his wife. A Valkyrie safe house in New York, USA. "Fucking Texas," Boudica spat at the radio. "I'd like to blow the whole damn state to smithereens." "Yeah, well, let's get the women out first, huh? And maybe some kids too." "You can." Boudica scowled at the barrel of her .45 as she burnished the steel. She was the leader of a feminist gang that made up an underground railroad for desperate women in all situations. She had successfully united dozens of diverse clans across the nation, but there was one state in the Union she avoided like the plague: Texas. "God damn it, this dude is tailor-made to your specs. Gyno turned plastic surgeon. He refused dozens of abortions that were legal exceptions, but he was too scared. Then he cashed out. This is a guy who is either a scumbag and deserves it, or really might be on board with the cause if he knew he were protected. So take care of it. You know how I feel about Texas." "Yeah, I do. I just don't know why." That's need to know. "Yeah, like everything from you. Meanwhile, you know all of my secrets." Boudica sauntered over to Roxy and caressed her cheek. "Oh, you know all my secrets too. The ones that matter." Roxy shoved her hand away and mocked the gesture, tracing the scar along Boudica's jawline. "Sure I do. You never asked." "Fine, I'm asking." Boudica sighed. "Shoot out at the OK Corral." "Exactly," Roxy sneered. "This is an intimidation gig. We need you on this job. So kidnap him and bring him to Oklahoma and I'll intimidate him. We can forget winning him over then. I give 2 f***s. Roxy threw a balloon of opiates on the counter. "You're slipping. You used to be smarter. And it's this shit. Here, take all you want. I'm done being your Pez dispenser." "Jesus." Boudica grabbed the balloon and began fixing a shot. "So no hunts tonight. I'll be fine. You're gonna get someone killed. That's the plan." 1 week later, Boudica was in a seemingly abandoned warehouse in Oklahoma with 8 of her generals from all corners of the nation. She'd taken a Xanax, but the withdrawals were clenching her guts. Her cartel liaison had her fix just moments away, but she couldn't show desperation any more than she could let herself dry heave in front of them. "So who's next in this gripe fest?" "I had 12 clients nabbed mid-Exodus, 7 last month. When you told me Anonymous was going to fix the problem last month." Cash slammed her hand on the table in disgust. Boudica kept her scarred jaw clenched and gestured to a leather-clad male across the room. He carried himself with an unexpected ease in this room full of anarchist females in full war paint. Anonymous rubbed his nose, hopped off a dusty table, and addressed the room in calming tones. "I know everyone is at their wits' end. Believe me, we see every loss. It kills us too. Colt, I know you lost your lieutenant and best friend 2 days ago. I'm so sorry. Serene, 4 soldiers arrested in 1 week. Jane, Christian, Sarah, I see all of you. Please trust that our team is working around the clock to pull out all these normies and get them to safety or care. Most often, guys, the most frequent cause of failure is the client themselves not listening to our advice about using the web once we start communications. I know you all tell them to stay exclusively on their burners, but they aren't listening. And Trump's lackeys are constantly dogging our tails and causing us to adjust and come up with new tactics. Please know, we are fighting ride or die beside you as hard as we can." "Hackers," someone coughed. Boudica glared in their general direction. "We all do our part. That doesn't explain why my sedentary list keeps growing and growing. Look, if they are unwilling to travel, my sympathy is muted by their apathy. Some of them can't travel, ailing mother or whatnot." Boudica sighed. "Are they back yet?" Someone nodded. Boudica kicked her heel twice on the wood floor and Roxy burst in with 4 gagged and blindfolded men. one volunteer abortion doctor for every other territory, the best we could do. But we have a treasure trove more coming from Texas soon. You might give these the courtesy of talking to them about their circumstances before divvying them up, but I don't really care either way. Last bit. I have 5,000 piranhas split between us and headed to your safe houses. Thank Anonymous for the manufacturer courtesy of our friends across the border. 6 months ago, Donald Trump decreed by executive order that all non-heterosexual marriages were null and void, and all pre-existing rape laws were wiped from the books because of all the, quote, fraud. But with the same order, Trump defined any sexual assault of a married woman as theft of property, punishable by 10 years mandatory sentence and possible castration. The number of rapes skyrocketed, as well as the number of marriages. When she first heard about the order, Boudica broke every piece of furniture in the safe house, then devised a plan. Her manufacturing wing developed what they affectionately called the piranha. This vaginal insert was a rape deterrent that allowed penile insertion but immediately ejected from the vagina, engaging dozens of fishhook barbs surrounding the penis. Then it would twist, which normally resulted in it dropping to the ground and the rapist following. There was normally an inch or two of salvageable material for a good surgeon. But then the men started traveling in gangs too. Most often they were members of local white supremacist police gangs running protection for paying Johns. Boudica's team could spot them a mile away and steered clear. Every once in a while, there was a scuffle. Look at those f***ers. Makes me sick. Protect and serve my ass. Just leave them be, okay? This we don't need. As Roxy was pulling away from the prowlers were 4 well-dressed young girls rounding a corner directly in the path of the men. Oh Jesus, it's 3 a.m., children! What are you doing out? Boudica scolded the dripping window pane. Life lessons. They think because there are 4 of them, they're safe. Turn around. Boudica, screw those little rich girls. I'm not facing those odds for them. Alright, stop the car. Get the f*** over. Roxy complained. What are you going to do? They haven't even done anything yet. Boudica hopped out of the back of the Lincoln Town car before it had even stopped, yanked the driver door open, and pushed Roxy into the 2 other enforcers in the front. She whipped the car around and sped back to the 2 converging groups. The men had just started to catcall to playful responses when they saw the headlights bearing down on them. Boudica aimed for the biggest guy in the group, who also happened to be the slowest, much to his misfortune. His blood and body smeared the pavement like roadkill. The other 6 men were hot and ready. They drew their weapons and began firing at the car. Boudica threw open the door and fired back. But not for long. The rich girls had all drawn weapons and flanked their would-be rapists and bodyguards. They were incapacitated or dead within seconds. Boudica barked an order and jumped back in her car. Scatter! All her Valkyries left the vehicle in different directions, and Boudica pulled the car up to the girls. Dangerous game. Sure you're up for it? Oh my God, your hair! You're her! You're really her? We need to split. Grab the John and hop in as long as you're cool. Are you kidding me? You know how that's gonna look on surveillance? You can split if you want. Roxy flung open the car door and walked into the darkness. The leader of the girls jumped in the front and her friends got him back. Boudica sped away as the sound of sirens approached. Boudica summoned a pitch-perfect Beaumont drawl. Y'all ever been to Texas?